this doesn't work, I'm going to punch a baby. What's up guys, Chris here from Mainely Mesh. Today we have a big old video, so make sure you buckle up and get ready for the ride. It's going to be a little while, but we think this is going to be a very important video in terms of getting on the same page with you guys with one of the most discussed topics in stringing, which is whip. So we at Mainely Mesh believe whip to be this great umbrella category, this term that has multiple components that add up to the greater idea of whip. So that whip in its simplest definition is whether or not your stick throws into the ground. And when you have one of those sticks that just has way too much whip, you know, those sticks that you throw it backwards with, that's what we think of as whip. But there are a lot of different things that can contribute to a stick that has more whip or less whip, and so it can be hard to define, as you've seen with us saying that we were going to come up with this magical whip scale that we didn't quite follow through with way back in the fall. But now we've broken down whip into 5 subcategories. The subcategories are as follows. We have drag, hook, slope, catch, and lip. And now each one of these categories, when maximized, can lead to a stick with too much whip or a lot of whip, in that each one of these, if you bring it to the extreme, can make it so your stick throws right into the ground. So when you're stringing a stick and you're trying to figure out what is causing your stick to whip, there are a lot of different things that you have to, look into and see which specific category it is or which combination of categories it is that are contributing to the whip of your stick. The first we're going to talk about is drag. Now, drag was something we explained a lot in our physics of hold video from almost a year and a half ago, and we talked a lot about kinetic friction and static friction and the idea of a channel that hugs the sides of the ball and doesn't necessarily make it catch. And we brought up this, I believe it was the same silver NOS, or it might have been the black one with otter mesh. We showed how if you have the mesh hug the sides of the ball, it can create a little bit more kinetic friction without adding that static friction, and thus add a little more hold to your stick without making it whip into the ground. Now, drag is more properly defined as how long it takes the ball to exit, how slowly the ball travels through the pocket. So if you have a super tight U-channel, it's going to drag a little bit more and take a little longer for it to come out of the stick. So as you can see, if you really pulled the sides quickly, it would take an incredibly long time to come out of the stick, and you would have a stick with a lot of whip. If you can work with the drag and make the Goldilocks channel that we've talked about before, you can have a stick that has more hold without having that idea of whip. The next category is hook. Now, hook is one that Sam has really brought my attention to more as we've worked together in terms of the idea of having a shooting stick, and hook is really how the pocket is affected by the shooting strings, in particular the lowest shooting string. So when Sam says that whip is not caused by the shooting strings, that is because we don't really have one that has the crazy hook here. But a hook in a stick can be caused by pulling the lowest shooting string more tightly. So we aren't factoring in all 3 shooting strings into this necessarily, because in a lot of our sticks we have these super tight top nylons, and these don't necessarily add hook to a pocket. They add more of a feel, when the ball is leaving the pocket. It's that thing that you can feel the ball hit off of it and release out of the stick without it necessarily lipping off the top of the stick at the scoop. So it's not just this, a tight nylon alone won't add whip to your stick. That's one of the main reasons why we use them. But when you're pulling the lowest shooting string straight across, that's when you can have this sort of hook, and the ball will catch on that lowest shooting string and add some whip to your stick. So if you're trying to vary the level of hook you have and do a small tweak to make your maybe a passing stick into more of a shooting stick, that's where you would look to. The next idea is slope, and this is another thing that we've mentioned a few times before. And so the slope is the angle of the mesh from the highest point of the pocket, the apex of the pocket, to the shooting string. So this stick has very little whip. There's no real catch points anywhere. There's not much hook because this bottom shooter is pretty loose. It doesn't have a crazy amount of whip. And you can see this in the slope, in this very gradual slope from the top, the deepest part of the pocket, to the shooting string. It's probably a good 7 or 8 inches long. It takes a gradual path to exiting the stick. Now, this is the Paul Rabel pattern for the Rabel High School, and you can see that not only is the slope here more intense, so the slope from the deepest part of the pocket, which is a little higher in this head, to the shooting strings is a little more intense. It's also got a shorter path to travel, so this is maybe only 4 or 5 inches. So what this is going to do is, without having any hook, without having any catch, it's going to increase the whip of the stick because the ball has to take a little bit more of an extreme angle to leave the stick. And so it's essentially canting the head by changing that slope of the pocket. Next up is the idea of catch. Catch is almost synonymous with bunching. It's what you could probably call true whip, and all these ideas like shiftiness, floating, fluidity of the pocket, they all funnel into the idea that is catch. So when you're making a true shooting stick, and I'm talking like Zach Dorn 117, Paul Rabel, 112, like a real shooting stick, you're gonna factor in the idea of catch more prevalently than any of the other ideas. So catch has to do with, obviously, catch points that we talked about before, but catch points is kind of a smaller subsection of catch, and catch itself, as you can see with this pocket, it's super shifty. It's not necessarily hooking on these shooters, but it's going to get tangled up in these shooters a little bit longer and just really allow the ball to stay tucked into this high part of the stick for longer as you're going through your motion. Since it's staying higher in the stick, it's transforming more of your angular momentum into linear momentum as the ball is going through the motion of your body. It's allowing you to put more of the torque that you're generating into the speed of the ball, and it's really a true shooter stick. And a stick with a lot of catch is going to be pretty problematic when you're trying to just pass, because it's one of those things, the ball's going to get caught up in it. That's what catch is. It is caught in the stick for as long as possible in order to generate the most whip and the most power in your stick. So a stick that has a lot of catch will have a lot of whip. And if you are trying to, in the most simplest form, the first thing you should look for if your stick is whipping is it catching on something? Is it catching on the lowest shooter? Does it have whip? Is it catching on the channel because it has a lot of drag? Is it catching because there's a large angle of the slope? And we'll talk about lip at the end, but catch is really the true whip of a stick. And if you want a true shooting stick, if you're trying to break some shot speed records, you want to have as much catch as possible. Our final idea is the simplest and actually least common nowadays, the idea of lip. And it's how the ball lips off the scoop of the stick. When I say it's the least common, it really just with the proliferation of some of these 9-diamond top strings and the triangle tops and more people stringing their own sticks and adding more tension across the top, we don't have many issues with people having the ball click off the plastic anymore. But back in the day, with some of the factory strung sticks with soft mesh, you could have these sticks that would have so much lip and almost have a catch point at the top of the stick. It would hold in that little, lip of the stick and throw right into the ground. And so the easiest analogy for this is for those of you who have messed around with mini sticks and you have your field mesh in one of your miniature sticks, and it might not have any shooters, it might not have any channel, it might not have a crazy slope, it has no shooter, so there's no hook, there's no catch in anything, but it's lipping off the top and you can do crazy one-handed spins with it. That's what we're talking about when we talk about lip, is how the ball is catching on the top of the scoop, the top plastic. So in summation, thanks so much for hanging around for the entire video. We really just want to open up the conversation and hear what you guys have to say, because these are words that a lot of people have used really well in the community to try to describe some of these ideas. And we just want to make it a little bit easier to categorize these and have whip still be this grand definition, this grand umbrella idea. So please comment down below what you guys think. If you guys have any additional ideas. I know we don't talk about box pockets a lot because we don't understand them as much, and there's some different dynamics than apply here. So these are kind of Americanized ideas of whip. But this is step one. We're going to give you guys some more field demos of us using these sticks so you guys can have some physical demonstrations of how these ideas work together. Thank you guys so much. And we'll catch you guys next time. 4 hours later. Hey!